Our keyword is cyborg feminism, and we wanted to start by just kind of describing what cyborg can be taken to mean in this context.
So, a brief introduction to cyborgs in general. Cyborg stands for a cybernetic organism. It is it's an organism with organic and biomechatronic parts. That can actually apply to a lot of things. Darth Vader, yes, is a cyborg. That also applies to people with pacemakers or like hearing aids or any manner of other things. We are looking at a feminist reading of cyborgs rather than the literal cyborg. One of the main points in her manifesto was about the deconstruction of gender. For Haraway, the idea of a cyborg was a female body that was not linked to pure biological essentialism. She tried to find a way to create an identity for women that didn't fall within the gender binary and wasn't constrained to expectations about natural femininity.
Also, in the future, like the cyborgs do not have an origin story per se, as we normally would think of one, which is definitely an interesting facet, the feminism of it, because without the origin story of man and woman, there are so many more possibilities. For real though, what is the indeterminacy of gender? Because I was a little confused.
Oh, okay. So Haraway also talks about the indeterminacy of gender, and I think that's, she uses a lot of big words. And sometimes it makes it hard to understand what she's talking about. But I think that what she's trying to get at is this idea that rather than creating a group around womanhood, you create groups that are determined by what she calls affinity. So cyborgs aren't women.
That gender is not the important part. You are not cyborg women. You are just cyborgs who happen to group together through other things that are not related to gender. But cyborgs do not need that, so there is no gender. So cyborg feminism is kind of a way of making the body irrelevant to what feminism is and should be.
Yeah, I think that we're looking at cyborgs as a feminist metaphor and a way to reject biological essentialism as a basis for, ways of acting or roles you play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and throwing away the roles because they are created by these origin stories of man does this and woman does this, and that is how society should be forever. But cyborgs do not have an origin story, so there's so much more freedom.
Or their origin story is not rooted in like out of man comes woman or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one of Donna Haraway's big points is that we have a system of informatics of domination, which is semi-confusing, but
super confusing.
I've taken it to mean just in the general, the power structure of society, where we've been experiencing a paradigm shift from the white capitalist hierarchy into the current state, however it is now. But Haraway wants to push towards a new system that is not enforced through the old hierarchy.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an imagination. Well, the interesting thing is that since this essay was written in 1985, it does sort of, a lot of it is speculative and perhaps definitely use of creating a what-if situation that allows you to think about our society. So that imagined paradigm shift towards informatics of domination, it's really cool to think about it now in 2014.
Yeah, is this what she imagined, or is this completely different from what we wanted? Are we already cyborgs?
What is the informatics of domination? Yeah. How is this different from white capitalist hierarchy?
Right. Another thing that that Haraway is really enforcing is creating a new society instead of trying to change the old one, which really is reminiscent of Lord's idea that the master's tools cannot dismantle the master's house.
Right. Yeah,
And
definitely.
they were writing at the same time, even, which is also interesting.
Right. That article written by Audre Lorde was published in 1984, so they were absolute contemporaries.
Yeah.
And
She was a very important Black feminist and womanist and poet who wrote a lot on these topics. And Donna Haraway was similarly important in
a sort of postmodernist viewing.
Yeah.
And definitely, I think that they both make an argument for both intersectionality and a sort of self-definition and like creation of tools.
Right. And it's more important of how we accept our differences and identify ourselves based on that than based on we are all women together, because it's difficult to like grab everyone into a we when there are just so many factors that need to be taken into account.
So we have a couple questions and like sort of discussion things that we could like take away from the idea of the cyborg as proposed by Haraway.
Namely, what is gender, if it can be so easily, not easily, but if it can be abandoned with the creation of this new cyborg like reality. And it also brings to mind the questions of, do we need to exist solely in like a physical reality, since we have so much already on the internet and in the cyber webs of the mysteries of life?
I think that's really like a very interesting thing to think about now, because the internet is such a big part of people's lives, and on the internet, gender kind of falls away, and it's actually really, you could argue that that's some form of a cyborg, our virtual reality existence on the internet. I'm very interested in looking at the internet as a cyborg tool.
Yeah. Right.
Other things, other thoughts.
The fact that this whole thing is kind of like a thought exercise, which can be interesting if you try to take it literally, but I think both of them are very relevant, both when we think about like actual literal cyborgs and then the metaphor of it. Like, how can we use this to create a new reality? Or like that goes back to the question of, are we already there? Like, is this what she was imagining?
And if you look at the full definition of a cybernetic organism, which is just sort of biomechatronic parts and organic parts working together, you can even think about a cyborg in a much wider definition, something like a community being a cyborg, especially if we look at this in terms in relation to virtual reality spaces. And if this is a thought exercise, sort of the way we shape communities with the ideas about cyborgs, how those can work with each other.
Right, and if we do shape our communities by affinity rather than by gender, it kind of leads me to ask, how do we create like this change